Duke lands Dame Sarr. State gets Darrion Williams, and we're still waiting.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, May 26th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you so much for making us your first listener watch to get your week going the right way. Special shout out to all you everydayers here with us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord and the great Locked On Tar Heels Insiders group as well. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Hey guys, it is Memorial Day. I learned a couple of years ago, you don't say Happy Memorial Day, which makes sense because this is a day where we are thinking of those who have given their lives in service to our country. And so we recognize that it is Memorial Day. And I just want to say a word to those of you who are mourning lost family members today, that my thoughts and prayers are with you, and want to thank you on behalf, thank you for your family member who served our country and paid that ultimate sacrifice. Speaking of which, it being Memorial Day, a reminder as you listen or watch this, I'm actually recording this on Thursday, late Thursday night, leading into Memorial Weekend, because right now I am gone to Indianapolis for the Indy 500. It's one of my best friend's 40th birthdays, and we went to celebrate that. He goes every year, and so he was like, hey, come hang out. So we're doing that. That said, a reminder that I'm not giving you any weekend happenings today. I don't know as I record this what happened in the ACC baseball tournament. I don't know as I record this what happened in the women's lacrosse Final Four or any other breaking news from the weekend. If there is any of that, we will get to it on Tuesday's show. I promise you that. But on today's show, Carolina still waiting while Duke and NC State add pieces that Carolina, in my opinion, would have loved to have had. Also, getting a lot of questions, like a crazy amount of questions in the last day about Ven-Allen Lubin. So we'll look at that. And then the CFP, boy, did they finally get it right with a change they should have made from the very beginning with the playoff format. We'll talk about all that coming up on the show today. Let's start with Duke and State getting guys on Thursday. Duke lands Dame Sarr, the Italian 6'8" wing. State gets Texas Tech transfer Darrion Williams, who we literally just did a show about earlier this week and how I would love to see him in Chapel Hill. Dame Sarr, we did a video about him earlier in May as a possibility. And for the Tar Heels, we are still waiting. And with both of those guys off the board now, two rival opponents, which is doubly frustrating, it becomes all the more incumbent on the Tar Heels to find what's likely their final critical piece of this year's puzzle. Yes, they might add one or two, like something else somewhere. But in terms of like critical rotation player, critical starter, there's just like it could have been one of those guys, but it's not. As for Dame Sarr, we talked about this on the show we did on him, but Illinois and Duke had both been on him for a while, but Illinois landed Andre Stojakovic, and Duke got that commitment from Cedric Coward. And so I thought at that point, like, oh, Dame Sarr is out there and we could land him, because I thought he would go to Illinois or Duke and they're set at those positions. But what happened here is now it seems like the writing's on the wall that Cedric Coward is going to stay in the NBA draft. And so that reopens that spot for Duke and Dame Sarr, and bada bing, bada boom, it moved pretty quick. As for Darrion Williams, this was one of the landing points that was mentioned for him as soon as he pulled out of the NBA draft earlier this week, along with Kansas and Ohio State. And it is, in fact, NC State that lands him. Will Wade has been adding some guys to this team. How good will they be? We don't know, but better. And then that's probably a good thing, right? It's better. I love beating up on NC State, but I want to beat up on a decent NC State team. But as we sit here, it's like, I know intellectually that we need to be patient and we need to wait, But as you see Duke and State making these moves, it becomes increasingly hand-wringing-y. We've talked about Ivan Karchenkov. It sounds like from all the latest intel that he's ultimately going to be Arizona bound. And so it's just like these pieces are falling apart. And so you look at it and you think, okay, there are some potentials still out there, but now that's running thin. Kind of like with the incoming freshman class, where it was like Carolina tried all those elite guys, and it came down to Caleb Wilson, and there was nobody else Carolina was looking at of those elite guys. Everyone else had committed elsewhere. And I had been patient and hopeful, but I was getting nervous. And then Caleb Wilson committed to Carolina, and that was that. And I think he's going to be an absolute dude. So, look, we're not in a situation where it's like, Isaac, all hope is lost. These guys are gone. But my inbox of my text messages, my Twitter DMs, my everything else would suggest that I'm not the only one in the Tar Heel fan base that's like, our patience is wearing thin. And look, you know me, if you're a regular with our show, I'm a very patient person. I'm a very glass half full kind of person. And again, I know that we need to let all these things play out, but I can sense the patience of the fan base wearing very thin, to the point of like, so it was funny. Andy Patton, my co-host on Locked On College Basketball, he and I had recorded the Friday show where we were talking about Dame Sarr because he had committed literally after we finished. And as I'm editing the show to get it ready to go up for Friday, was when Darrion Williams committed to Texas Tech. And I couldn't do anything with it because I had to run out the door to my son, coach my son's baseball game. So Andy got a little short up about that. But so I don't really typically look at my phone during baseball games. But once we got done, I picked it up, and legit, I had multiple text messages from, all my regulars that check in, things on Discord, things in the Locked On Tar Heels insiders, just a lot of people very concerned, Twitter DMs, and it's just, people need to see something happen. Now, part of this is Carolina seems to like to play things close to the vest, where they don't want to let you know what's going on, while other schools like to promote everything. And so it's tough because I think the way Carolina handles that is very wise, but it makes everyone uneasy and nervous because it seems like the Tar Heels are doing nothing. And that's not the case. So for Carolina, I think the biggest name I look at as a potential here still is Luka Bogavac. And we talked about him a week or so ago. I think he would be phenomenal. And I know Dame Sarr does a lot of stuff really well, but what he doesn't do as well as Bogavac is shoot from deep. And Bogavac could bring that to the team, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's a possibility. If Jamir Watkins from Florida State decides to pull out, that's still a possibility. I think Carolina would want to get in on that if he decides to come back to college next year. So there are guys, both of those, by the way, who could be really, really good for Carolina. With Watkins, we've seen him do it at the American collegiate level. With Bogavac, we've not, right? Like there would be a lot of red tape. There would be him figuring out America and American culture and all of that kind of stuff. So those are factors that we have to consider. But I think it's not like all hope is lost. There are possibilities out there. But I know that the time is wearing thin and we got to see what happens. So I hear it, everybody, and I'm with you. Got to get somebody. And I know it's frustrating waiting, but all hope is not lost. Stay with me on it, and we'll keep seeing this through. Now, along with that, there's not really been any news on the Ven-Allen Lubin front or Cade Tyson for that matter. And speaking of me getting a lot of questions, the Ven-Allen Lubin questions are coming fast and furious. So we'll try to talk about that some in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monarch Money, do you ever check your bank account and start wondering where'd all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, maybe you went to that game or that concert, it's easy to lose track of it all. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility of and control over all your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, you can track your investments and your spending all in one place. So you stop just kind of managing your money and actually start building wealth. And also, what I love about Monarch is instead of having to juggle through a bunch of different financial apps, it's a one-stop shopping app where you can check finances, track spending, and even plan out long-term goals. Another thing is that my wife and I, we really like to be on the same page when it comes to finances. And with Monarch Money, it takes the stress out of doing that because we can do it all together. So maybe you want to join us. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. It's kind of funny. All of a sudden, over the last day or two, I've just had a string of questions come in about Ven-Allen Lubin. Part of it is probably because Coach Rob and I talked about the front court some on last Thursday's show. So that might be a factor in it. But also, like I remember I am going to be recording a mailbag episode some point this week for next week. I'm going to be out of town with my family on vacation. And so I'm doing some recording ahead this week, one of which will be a mailbag episode. I've had a couple mailbag questions about that. So wanted to address one of those. Go ahead and hit that today because there's been such a flood of Ven-Allen Lubin conversation. And I guess I should say, as I prepare to talk about it, that as I record this Thursday, you're listening to this or watching this on Monday. So maybe there's been some Ven-Allen Lubin news between now and then. So I'll speak as to where things stand as of today, Thursday, May 22nd. And I'll pose it from some of our folks in our Discord. Hubert, Don't Leave Davis asked, people have been saying Ven-Allen Lubin probably won't come back, but I haven't heard anything like that. Do you think he is coming back? Question mark. And then Carolina Girl 88 asked, I would like to ask the same question regarding Cade Tyson. Thank you very much. Yes, great questions from both of you, Hubert Don't Leave Davis and Carolina Girl 88. It has been oddly silent on both of those guys. We've heard Ven-Allen Lubin matched with a couple different teams here and there. There's been, speaking of NC State, we've heard some buzz there at some point along the way. We've heard some different SEC schools, things like that. Cade Tyson, not really too much of anything. And so there is this prevailing sentiment. We were having some of this conversation in the Locked on Tar Heels Discord chat on Thursday of last week, where people were saying basically the idea of, with the portal going longer and longer with no commitment elsewhere for either of these guys, like, does that give us hope or potential that they might come back? Or is it just like, yeah, they're going to commit somewhere else, it's just not going yet? Well, keep in mind with Ven-Allen Lubin, there was that whole thing. Remember that awkward, weird, where he's like, I'm entering the transfer portal, but I'm basically doing it so I can come back to Carolina pending the house settlement and what that does for NIL stuff, right? There was that whole weird thing. And so on face value, he said, hey, don't worry about this. I'm ultimately coming back. But then it really kind of came out like Carolina's not going to wait around. And then now the house settlement is taking longer and longer and longer. The judge still hasn't fully and finally approved it yet. Again, as I record on Thursday, that's true anyway. And so there's this wonderment of like, is that still in place where when the house settlement stuff happens, then Ven-Allen Lubin can look at his NIL stuff and decide if he's going to come back? Or is it just like, bro, we love you and we appreciate your year here in Chapel Hill, but if you're stepping out, you're gone, right? And it seems like that, maybe not that sentiment, but that idea of Ven-Allen Lubin is not going to be part of the Tar Heels. And it seems like the same kind of thing for Cade Tyson. But while I don't think currently that either of these guys will be back on the roster for 25-26, here's something that's true. The portal era is wild and wacky and crazy things happen that you never expect. And so while the best, like if you were betting on it, the smart money would be to say that neither of them are back. But the house doesn't always win, I guess, to keep betting terms going, right? And so because of the randomness and the wackiness of the portal, because both these guys are going to land somewhere. They're going to play college basketball at the Division I level next year, probably at a high level. I just don't see Cade doing what he did last year for a second straight year. I think he has a big bounce back this year. And so, I guess we cannot rule it out that either or I wouldn't probably say both of them would be back next year. But I mean, it's crazy. 247 Sports right now has like a top 10 list of top 10 available players in the portal, which that will have changed over the weekend by the time you listen to or watch this. But as of where the list was when I recorded it, he's number 8 on that list. Ven-Allen Lubin is at now. Part of that is with still not having players, all the players come out of the draft that are going to come out of the draft. Remember that deadline is Wednesday, 2 days from now at 11:59 Eastern time. That there is some bottom of the barrel happening, and not to say that Ven-Allen's bottom of the barrel, but being 8th on that list isn't as prestigious as it would be like at the beginning of the portal, I would say. And so keep your eyes out for the house settlement when that's confirmed and what that then spurs on Ven-Allen Lubin to do once all those rules and structures are set in place, which July 1st has been the date that's been thrown about as probably when that will be. And I think part of the conversation is this as well. And Coach Rob and I talked about this some last week in that front court conversation. With Carolina having Henri Veesaar, probably your starting 5, Caleb Wilson, probably your starting 4, Jarin Stevenson behind them, and then you've got James Brown, you've got Zayden High. That's kind of 5 big men. I expect those first 3 to be the main rotation of it, and then the other guys to provide spot minutes, but hopefully demonstrate and show some growth as well. And so to that end, while I think Ven-Allen Lubin would be so helpful as a backup, it's probably just not going to be the amount of minutes that he would be looking for. And so for those reasons, I think he would want to be out. But also the wing position, the small forward, the 3, is an area, in my opinion, of bigger need and concern than is the backup 5. Because I think that the 3 you're looking for right now is probably your starting 3, unless Jarin Stevenson or maybe Jonathan Powell demonstrates that they could take that role. But I mean, it's like you take the talent you can get and then figure it out from there. And so I think Carolina's focus is more on that small forward position than it is keeping a backup big. And follow the money with me here. If you can use Drake, the money that would have been earmarked for Drake Powell, the money that would have been earmarked for Ven-Allen Lubin and Cade Tyson, and you pool all that and send it to one person for this 3 for the small forward position, then you're cooking with something, right? But if Ven comes back and you give that money, or Cade and you give that money, so that's a factor in it as well, is the financial side of this. And especially like we'll have to see what happens if you get it done or don't get it done before or after the house settlement stuff kicks in. That's a factor in all of this as well. It's really nuts. Again, the portal era, things are so constantly, the portal and NIL era, things are so constantly and quickly changing that it's hard to say anything with any certainty. certainty. That's a thing, right? And so again, my direct answer to the question is no, I don't think either of these guys are back. But I do think it's a greater than 0% chance that one of them, probably not both, are back. It's weird, right? It's just, it's so hard to know. It's so hard to know. But we'll see. But ultimately, I would imagine that Carolina lands a 3, a wing, over and above either of those guys. And I know that is Cade Tyson's position, right? And so that would make some sense if push came to shove and they weren't able to land, maybe one of those guys we talked about before, like a Jamir Watkins or a Bogavac or something like that. Maybe you say, Cade, we'd love to have you back. But again, I think that's lowering the bar, with all due respect to Cade Tyson. Okay, the College Football Playoff Committee just made the most no-brainer decision of all the no-brainer decisions back on Thursday. We'll talk about that in just a second. Last year was the first year of the expanded college football playoff. We had 12 teams getting in, and basically you needed a doctorate to explain how it all went. Let me remind you of how it was previously before I tell you about the adjustment that has just been made. So last year, 12 teams got in. The 5 highest rated conference champions were all guaranteed a spot, with the 4 highest conference champions getting seeds 1 through 4, which meant a bye into the quarterfinal round. So last year, those 4 teams were Oregon, the Big Ten champ, as the number 1 overall seed. Georgia as the SEC champ, as the number 2 overall seed. Remember, they beat Texas. Then here's where it got weird. Boise State as the Mountain West champ was the number 3 seed, the 3rd highest rated conference champion, despite being 9th in terms of the college football playoff rankings. And then the number 4 overall seed was Arizona State, who won the Big 12 at 12th overall. And then, so those were your 4 teams. And it was odd and weird. And I know it's similar to like what we do in the NFL, right? The division champs get priority to the top seeds over and above the wild cards, right? That's a reality. And so it's kind of similar to that, but it does feel different to a degree. And then after those top 4, you have basically the next 8, regardless of ranking, other than the 5th highest rated conference champ is also guaranteed a spot. So last year, that was Clemson, who was 16th in the final CFP rankings, but was the 5th highest rated conference champ. And so they got in. So that's kind of where things were last year. And then the other teams were basically the next 7 highest rated teams after all that. And so that gave you Texas, Tennessee, Ohio State, SMU, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame. The change the CFP has made, and it's glorious and perfect and great, is that now I feel silly even having to say this, is like they made this big grandiose change. They're just going to take the 4 highest ranked teams, regardless of whether they were conference champs or not. The teams that are 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the final CFP rankings, those are teams 1 through 4 in the bracket, and the teams that get the bye into the quarterfinal round. How hard was that? I like my kids and I could have made that decision, and they're 9 and 6. I mean, it's just, and then everything else is kind of the same. It's teams 1 through 12. The lone caveat is that you still do have the 5 highest ranked conference champs are guaranteed a spot. So last year, the one outlier to this would be Clemson would have still gotten in, even though they were 16th, because they were the 5th highest rated conference champ. So I guess, you could see last year, you had, because the top 4 teams were 2 Big Tens and 2 Big East. So last year, under this new model, it would have been Oregon still number 1 overall, Georgia still number 2 overall, but then Texas as the number 3 seed instead of Boise State, and then Penn State as the number 4 seed instead of Arizona State. And that means that you would have had 2 of your conference champs in that top 4, but the other 3 would have all been in 5 through 12. So you would have had Boise State would have been the number 9 seed, and you would have had Arizona State would have been the number 11 seed. Even though they were 12th in the rankings, they're bumped up to 11th since Clemson was outside the top 12. Does that make sense? And so that's where the only wrinkle with it to where it's not just straight up top 12 is that you do guarantee the top 5 conference champs a slot. That makes some sense to me. And I like that. But good grief. Like, what befuddles me is why this wasn't the thing from the get-go. Why didn't we start here? That makes no sense. That said, though, kudos, thank you, well done, huzzah to the CFP for evaluating this thing and not just trying to grasp like, oh, we got to hold on to what we did in year 1 because that's what we did and we can't look dumb. And it's like, no. I think they recognized, hey, we're going to try something. We're going to reevaluate it. We'll keep what works. We'll send out what doesn't and get something new in. And so I appreciate that they were just ready to pivot and make changes. Good for them. Now, what they did not do is commit to this new model for anything beyond the upcoming season. So there are no long-term commitments to this thing as there were. Another part of the conversation is that there was like $8 million given to those top, I think just the top 4, not the top 5 conference champs. And so they're going to maintain that payout to those conference champs, even though they won't necessarily be seeds 1 through 4. So that's a nice little consolation prize for them. So meaning, let's say Carolina in their first year first year under Bill Belichick is the ACC champ. Let's say we go out and win the conference championship, but we are 6th overall, but we're one of the top 4 conference champions. So we don't get that bye, but we would still get that buyout, that payout of $8 million. So I think that's kind of a cool way to help honor that money given to it. So kind of behind the scenes of this thing, it came together on Thursday afternoon. It sounds like they've been thinking about it and talking about it for months from all the various things I've read. And that's another part of this. It's like months. You had to think about this decision for months. You could have made this call in January, the day after the national championship game, because it was so plainly obvious that this is what should have happened. There was no thought needed to make this decision. But again, I'm glad they did. And it had to be unanimous. That's the thing. It was all 10 FBS commissioners plus Notre Dame's AD, since they're independent, right? So those 11 kind of comprise the CFP managing committee. And so that makes sense. And it's interesting, some quotes coming out of this thing from Rich Clark, the executive director of the CFP. He says, quote, "This change will continue to allow guaranteed access to the playoff by rewarding teams winning their conference championship, but it will also allow us to construct a postseason bracket that recognizes the best performance on the field during the entire regular season." And so I appreciate that. They're trying to balance these two things of, hey, we do want to honor and reward those that win championships, because championships matter. But we also want to recognize that there are teams that are very, very, very good and sometimes better than those conference champs. And that's who should be deservingly in those seats. And so I agree with that. Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, said, quote, "We all have a responsibility to serve our constituents while also being mindful as to what's best for college football. Today's decision was done in the best interest of the sport. It may not always benefit the ACC, but it was the right decision, and that's a responsibility I take very seriously," end quote. I appreciate this. I think a lot of people would say, forget that, Jim Phillips. Look out for the ACC and the ACC only. But I think in a day and age where conference structure is basically fluid, even more so, looking out for what's best for the sport is important. Now, that means it can't just be an SEC fest unless the SEC teams are legit at the top of this thing, right? Like the day I see these top 4 schools getting the buys as like 3 ACC schools in a Big Ten or 3 SEC schools in a Big Ten, that ain't going to smell right. And Greg Sankey is pushing every button he can to make that kind of reality. That's what I don't want to see. Also, I guess an interesting wrinkle in this is one of the issues of the old way is that Notre Dame could literally never be a conference champ, so they could never get a bye. This opens it up now where if they're top 4, they get a bye. It's just sensible, right? And I'm not a Notre Dame apologist, but that seems silly to create a system where one of your biggest entities couldn't make it into being in the position of getting by. That just feels weird. Now, the other big thing I want to see change, and I don't think it'll happen this year, but the first round games are all on campus. And then we get to the quarterfinals, and those were at neutral sites, along with then the semifinals and the championship, which had been the case when we had a 4-team CFP. I love that. Fine. Keep the semifinals and the championship at neutral sites. But man, I want to see home games for these quarterfinal matchups as well as the first round. That's the one thing I did like about doing that in last year's version. Like, how cool would it have been to see Penn State have to go play at Boise State, right? Like, that would have been awesome to see that on the blue turf, but not meant to be. Anyway, all that said, more on-campus matchups, please and thank you. We'd love to see that. So there you go. CFP getting all of this right. And we'll continue to see, because it sounds like they're saying, hey, we want to keep adjusting and we want to make sure we're doing this well and honoring it. So I'm so grateful to that for the CFP. And I think this is going to be better for the product of college football. And I think part of the reason I want to talk about this is because now, why not think crazy? With Bill Belichick at the helm, why not Carolina? Why couldn't they get their way to being in this CFP? Maybe I'm crazy. But be crazy with me and let's dream a little bit. Thanks so much for joining me here to kick off a brand new week as we get Memorial Day behind us and into a new week. And man, I just want to thank you again for being with us. Coming up on tomorrow's show, again, I will update from the weekend the things we didn't get to talk about. And also today on Monday is the baseball selection show. So on tomorrow's show, we'll have Carolina's regional opponents. The Tar Heels will be hosting, and so that'll be a thing. All right. So if you've not subscribed to the show on audio and video, make sure you do that right on YouTube and your favorite podcast audio platform as well, so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. If you've not joined our Discord, we'd love to see you in there. That link is in the show notes. Absolutely free to join. And if you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels insiders and you want to go deeper with the show, come do it, man. Be an insider, go deeper with the show, help support the show and what we're doing. And you get lots of perks as well, including you get priority for when we have mailbag episodes is one of those. And I'm going to be recording a mailbag episode this week ahead of next week. So get those mailbag questions in. Would love to have them from you. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.